ever considered a traffic ticket just a minor annoyance?
Mm.
Think again, especially if you're driving here in Maryland. What might seem like a small slip-up, well, it can actually have surprisingly far-reaching consequences.
That's absolutely right. It's easy, to think you can just pay the fine and move on, but Maryland law, it really has some teeth when it comes to traffic violations.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're tapping into the expertise of the law offices of Haskell and Dyer to really understand the serious side of traffic violations here.
Right.
We're going beyond just the basic cost of the ticket to explore the real-life impact and pinpoint when getting legal help isn't just like a good idea, it's absolutely essential.
Yeah, and we've got some incredibly useful information from their website covering, well, everything from the complexities of DUI and DWI cases to the often overlooked seriousness of speeding tickets, and even issues with your driver's license itself. It's a pretty comprehensive look at what drivers in Maryland really need to be aware of.
So, our goal today is simple. Give you a clear understanding of Maryland traffic law. We want to highlight just how significant some of these violations can be and really empower you to make informed decisions if you ever find yourself facing a traffic charge.
Okay.
Okay, so let's tackle this common idea first, that traffic violations are just, minor blips on the radar. It's a pretty widespread belief, isn't it?
It really is.
You get a ticket, pay it, end of story.
Unfortunately, that's often far from the truth. Even what might seem like a relatively minor infraction can set off a whole chain reaction of negative consequences.
And those consequences, we've learned from Haskell and Dyer, can be surprisingly severe. We're talking about potential jail time,
Right.
probation, the very real threat of having your driver's license suspended, and of course, those points that can pile up on your driving record like unwanted baggage.
And let's not forget the very tangible financial hit.
Yeah.
Even those seemingly small offenses can lead to expensive fines. But something that really affects a lot of people is these significant jump in their insurance rates.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on the violation, especially something like a DUI, your annual premiums could double, maybe even triple for several years. We're talking thousands, potentially tens of thousands of dollars over time.
Exactly. It's not just that initial sting of the fine, it's the long-term drain on your wallet.
Right.
And Haskell and Dyer strongly advises that if you've been accused of any traffic violation, reaching out to an experienced criminal defense attorney is probably the smartest move you can make.
Definitely.
It's the best way to truly grasp how those charges could impact, well, every aspect of your life. Now let's delve into something that's definitely more than just a financial penalty. DUIs and DWIs. These terms, they get used interchangeably sometimes, so can we clarify the distinction right away?
Absolutely. So in Maryland, driving under the influence, or DUI, that falls under Maryland Transportation Code Section 21902A. It's defined as operating a vehicle with a blood alcohol content, or BAC, of 0.08% or higher.
Okay.
Think of it this way. The state draws a hard line at 0.08. If your blood alcohol level is at or above that, it's automatically considered a DUI. Doesn't really matter how you feel you're driving.
Got it.
Now, driving while impaired, or DWI, under Section 21902B, that's when your BAC is between 0.07% and 0.08%, or if you are otherwise impaired by alcohol, just maybe to a lesser degree. Both are misdemeanor offenses, but the potential penalties, they do differ.
Okay, so let's start with DUI, that BAC of 0.08% or higher. What kind of trouble could a first-time offender be looking at?
Well, for a first offense DUI, Maryland law outlines a potential penalty of up to 1 year in jail and a $5,000 fine. However, the legal experts at Haskell and Dyer note that in reality, the fines can often range quite a bit higher, maybe $500 up to $5,000 sometimes.
Wow.
And jail time can also vary considerably, maybe a couple of months, potentially even 5 years, really depending on the specific details and circumstances of that case.
Wow, that's a pretty wide range of potential consequences. But it doesn't end there, right? There are also those dreaded points that get added to your license.
That's correct. A DUI conviction carries a significant 12 points on your driving record.
12 points.
Yep. This almost always triggers a mandatory suspension of your driver's license, which can last anywhere from 6 months to, well, over a year.
Okay.
And on top of that, the court often orders the installation of an ignition interlock device on your vehicle.
Right, the breathalyzer thing you have to blow into.
Exactly. You'll have to use that to start your car.
Haskell and Dyer really emphasizes how serious even a first-time DUI can be. They warn about the almost immediate loss of driving privileges and those skyrocketing insurance premiums. It sounds like something you absolutely cannot afford to take lightly.
Precisely. And their approach to defending these cases, it's very thorough. They'll meticulously examine every aspect, starting with, like, was the initial traffic stop by the police even lawful? Right through to whether the field sobriety tests were administered correctly, according to the procedures. They'll even challenge the admissibility of the evidence being used against you.
Okay.
Their ultimate goal is always to find a resolution that minimizes the negative impact on your life, which often involves seeking reduced charges.
And they really stress the potential dangers of just ignoring a DUI charge. They point out you could be facing much more serious felony charges for repeat offenses, significantly longer periods of license suspension, and those relentless insurance penalties that just keep adding up year after year.
Absolutely.
Now, what about DWI, where the BAC is a little lower,
Right.
between 0.07% and 0.08%? Are the consequences significantly different for a first offense there?
For a first offense DWI, the potential penalties under state law are actually quite similar to a first DUI. Up to 1 year in jail, a $1,000 fine. But for subsequent offenses, the penalties do increase, potentially reaching up to 2 years in jail and a $2,000 fine. You're also looking at 8 points being added to your license.
8 points. Still significant.
Still significant, yes. It'll still lead to a suspension of at least 180 days, and you'll likely face an interlock device requirement as well.
So, still very serious. And Haskell and Dyer advises that anyone facing any alcohol-related driving charge should treat it as a criminal matter, regardless of the specific BAC level.
Exactly. They use similar defense strategies in DWI cases, looking for any grounds to challenge the initial stop or the accuracy and reliability of the breathalyzer or blood tests.
Right.
Their aim is often to negotiate entry into maybe a diversion program or to plead the charge down to something less severe.
And the warning is basically the same, isn't it? If you fail to get legal counsel, you're potentially facing those automatic penalties, the risk of a felony conviction on a third offense, and a criminal record that can follow you for a long time.
Yeah, a long time.
Now, let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about speeding and reckless driving. To some, these might seem less severe than an alcohol-related offense, but Haskell and Dyer calls speeding a slippery slope. Why is that? What makes it so?
Well, because while exceeding the posted speed limit in Maryland, which is covered under the Transportation Article, Section 21801, is generally considered a civil infraction.
Okay.
The fines and, more importantly, the points that get added to your license, they increase quite quickly depending on just how far over the limit you were driving.
Can you give us some specific examples how those fines and points are structured based on speed?
Sure. So driving just 1 to 9 miles per hour over might get you a fine around $80 in 1 point.
Okay, 1 point.
Go 10 to 19 miles per hour over, that increases to about $90 in 2 points.
2 points now.
If you're between 20 and 29 miles per hour over, you're looking at a fine of about $160, still 2 points.
Still 2.
But if you really push it, like 30 miles per hour or more over the limit, the fines can jump from $290 up to maybe $530, and you'll get a significant 5 points on your license.
5 points, okay. And I think I also saw something mentioned about potential threat to safety surcharges in certain situations.
Yes, absolutely. Depending on the specifics of the speeding violation, those extra surcharges can definitely be tacked on top of the base fine.
And while speeding itself is a civil infraction, those accumulated points are the real danger here, aren't they?
That's the key.
If you pile up too many points within a certain time frame, you could find your driving privileges suspended by the MVA, the Maryland Vehicle Administration.
Exactly. That's the slippery slope part.
Right. So it's not just about paying the ticket and moving on. Haskell and Dyer highlights their efforts to get speeding tickets reduced, specifically to help protect your insurance rates. How do they typically do that?
Well, they might argue there were technical issues, maybe with the calibration of the speed gun or whatever device was used.
Okay.
Or they could question the accuracy of the police officer's visual guess of your speed. Their goal is often to negotiate a plea to a lesser violation, which could mean fewer points or maybe even no points on your record. They really emphasize not to take any speeding ticket lightly because even what seems like a minor one can lead to a spike in your insurance premiums or land you in the MVA's driver improvement program.
Right. Okay. Now, what about aggressive driving? Is that considered the same thing as speeding?
Not quite. Aggressive driving, defined under Related 21901.2, involves committing 3 or more specific moving violations within a short period.
3 or more. Okay.
Yeah. And this is actually classified as a traffic misdemeanor, not just a civil infraction. The standard preset fine is around $370, and it carries 5 points.
5 points again.
And interestingly, Maryland law even allows for a potential fine up to $500 in jail time. up to 2 months if the aggressive driving happens along with another traffic violation.
Wow. And Haskell and Dyer points out that accumulating these aggressive driving charges, plus other moving violations, can really do some serious long-term damage to your driving record.
Absolutely. And because it's a misdemeanor, it often requires a mandatory court appearance.
Okay.
So their approach is to vigorously contest these charges. Maybe argue that the separate incidents weren't really linked closely enough in time or location, or challenge the officer's evidence.
Makes sense.
They strongly caution that ignoring an aggressive driving ticket could lead straight to the full misdemeanor penalties, potential jail time, the max fine, and those significant points.
Got it. Okay, let's move on to reckless driving. How does that differ from aggressive driving and just speeding?
Okay, so reckless driving under Section 21901.1a is defined as operating a vehicle in wanton or willful disregard for the safety of persons or property. It's also a misdemeanor, but it carries even more severe potential penalties than aggressive driving.
Okay, how severe?
You could be facing a fine of $1,000 or even more, and a standard conviction also comes with a significant 6 points added to your license.
6 points.
6 points. Haskell and Dyer emphasizes that even a single reckless driving ticket not only adds those 6 points, but also creates a criminal record.
Right, that's key. The criminal record part.
Exactly. So because of the potential for serious consequences, their legal strategy often involves trying really hard to get these charges reduced to something less serious, like maybe careless driving or even just a basic traffic infraction.
And they really stress that not getting legal help in a reckless driving case could lead to an almost certain license suspension because of those 6 points.
Right.
And can also make it much harder to get that criminal record expunged later on.
Yeah, much harder.
Now, you also mentioned negligent driving. How does that fit into this whole picture?
Right, negligent driving. That's under Section 21901.1b. It's generally considered a less severe misdemeanor compared to reckless driving.
Okay.
It's often described as operating a vehicle in a way that endangers people or property because of a lack of sort of ordinary care and caution.
Less willful, perhaps.
Exactly. The preset fine is around $240. It typically carries between 1 and 3 points, depending on the specifics, like if it happened in a school zone or work zone. So, while it's less severe than reckless, it is still classified as a criminal offense and can certainly lead to increases in your insurance premiums.
Still hits the wallet.
Still hits the wallet. Haskell and Dyer advises against just dismissing these charges. They recommend talking with an attorney to try and avoid those automatic points and the higher insurance rates that follow.
So the crucial takeaway with speeding and these more serious driving offenses is, yeah, they are definitely not something you should just brush aside or ignore.
Not at all.
Now let's talk about something that sounds extremely serious. Hit-and-run incidents and fleeing from law enforcement.
You're absolutely right. These are very serious charges under Maryland law. Fleeing or attempting to elude a police officer, that's 21904. It's a misdemeanor for a first conviction. Punishable by up to 1 year in jail, $1,000 fine.
Okay.
But the potential penalties escalate significantly for any subsequent offenses. And furthermore, if your attempt to evade the police results in bodily injury to someone, or tragically in someone's death, you could be looking at felony charges, much longer prison sentences, substantially higher fines.
Wow. Haskell and Dyer really underscores that these are very serious charges with a significant likelihood of jail time. And a felony conviction means a permanent criminal record and a very lengthy license revocation.
Very lengthy.
They also mentioned that their defense strategy often involves arguing there is a lack of intent to actually flee.
That's a really critical point in how they approach these defenses.
Yeah.
They might argue the driver didn't clearly see the officer's signals to stop, or maybe there was some other legitimate, understandable reason why the vehicle didn't pull over immediately.
Okay.
But they strongly advise against ever ignoring a charge of eluding the police. That can very quickly lead to a warrant for your arrest and much more severe criminal penalties down the line.
Makes sense. And what about failure to stop or remain at the scene of an accident? A hit and run. How's that treated?
That's also treated very harshly by the legal system, even in cases where the accident only results in property damage.
Just property damage.
Yep, just property damage. Failing to stop and give your information can lead to a jail sentence up to 2 months, a $500 fine, and 8 points on your license.
8 points.
If someone is injured in the accident, the potential penalties jump dramatically. Up to 1 year in prison, $3,000 fine for non-serious injuries, up to 5 years in prison, and a $5,000 fine for serious injuries.
Wow.
And tragically, if the accident results in someone's death, The penalties can be as severe as up to 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine.
That's incredibly serious.
These offenses can start as misdemeanors but quickly escalate to felonies when injuries are involved.
So with these types of charges, your personal freedom, your driving privileges, they're really hanging in the balance.
Absolutely.
And Haskell and Dyer states they will aggressively fight these kinds of allegations, maybe by presenting evidence you did stop as required or contesting how severe the injuries actually were.
Exactly. But they also issue a very strong warning.
Yeah.
Failing to get qualified legal counsel in a hit-and-run case almost guarantees you'll face the maximum possible penalties.
Which means?
A felony conviction on your record, significant jail time, and a long-term or even permanent revocation of your driver's license.
Okay. Now, let's move on to a category of offenses that might actually surprise some people with their seriousness. Licensing offenses. Haskell and Dyer points out these are often treated as criminal matters.
Yeah, they really are.
Driving without a valid driver's license, it might seem like, I don't know, an administrative issue to some people, but what are the actual legal ramifications if you're caught doing that in Maryland?
Well, operating a motor vehicle on public roads in Maryland without ever having had a valid license is indeed classified as a criminal must-appear offense.
Must appear. Okay.
For a first-time conviction, you could face a potential jail sentence up to 60 days and a fine up to $500. For any subsequent convictions, the potential jail time can increase to as much as 12 months. And what's particularly important to note, if you are convicted of driving without a license and you later apply for a Maryland license,
Yeah.
you will face an automatic penalty of 12 points added to your record as soon as that license is issued.
Wow. 12 points just waiting for you.
Just waiting.
Yeah.
And Haskell and Dyer emphasizes this is often treated as a misdemeanor, meaning legal help is highly recommended. And in some cases, they might be able to negotiate alternatives like community service or a diversion program.
Okay.
But if you choose to ignore this charge, fail to appear in court, you are very likely looking at some jail time, even if it's short, and those 12 DMV points will be automatically applied the moment you finally get your legal driving privileges.
Right. Okay, now let's discuss driving with a suspended license. How is that viewed under Maryland law?
That's also considered quite serious.
I would imagine so.
It is. Under 16303C of the Transportation Article, operating a vehicle while your Maryland license is suspended is a serious misdemeanor offense. A first conviction carries a potential penalty of up to 1 year in jail, a $1,000 fine, and once again, 12 points.
12 points again.
12 points. A second conviction for the same offense within 3 years can lead to an increased potential jail sentence up to 2 years. These are also must-appear misdemeanors in court, often carrying a specific 31 code.
And Haskell and Dyer mentioned their first step in these cases is often carefully checking if the driver actually got proper legal notification of the suspension.
Exactly. If it can be shown you weren't properly notified, there might be legal grounds to get the suspension rescinded or overturned.
Oh, okay.
They also work hard to figure out the underlying reason for the suspension and strive to avoid any jail time for their clients. But it's crucial to understand, ignoring a citation for driving while suspended is extremely risky. It can quickly lead to automatic bench warrants for your arrest, enhanced penalties if you get caught later, and even potential felony charges if you have multiple convictions for this.
Wow. Okay. What about driving with a revoked license? Is that treated any differently?
Under Section 16303, driving with a revoked license, which often results from prior serious traffic offenses, actually carries the exact same potential penalties as driving while suspended.
Same penalties. Okay.
Yep. Up to 1 year in jail, a $1,000 fine for a first conviction, plus the 12 points. So the potential consequences, jail time for the loss of driving privileges, points are essentially the same.
Got it.
Haskell and Dyer treats these cases with real urgency, as clients in this situation often face huge challenges getting their license back. They work on things like filing petitions for provisional licenses or exploring other court remediation options to try and help clients get back on the road legally.
Okay.
And the warning is the same. Do not ignore this charge. It could lead to very long-term bans on getting your license reinstated and potential jail time.
Okay. Now, what about something like knowingly driving without valid car insurance? That seems like something people might overlook.
It does, but under Section 27202, knowingly operating a vehicle without the legally required insurance is a misdemeanor. First conviction, potential jail up to 1 year, fine up to $1,000, and 5 points.
5 points for insurance.
Subsequent convictions carry even harsher penalties. Now, Haskell and Dyer notes that sometimes if the lapse was unintentional, like an administrative oversight,
Yeah.
they can often work to get the charges reduced, maybe even refiled as civil infractions with less severe penalties.
Right.
But regardless of the circumstances, a conviction for driving without insurance will lead to the revocation of your vehicle registration.
Ah, the registration too.
Yes. They emphasize that just ignoring a ticket for no insurance can lead to a criminal record and losing your vehicle registration, which is a very costly mistake.
And you also mentioned failing to even carry proof of insurance in the car. Is that treated just as seriously?
In practical terms, it often is. While you might get a chance to resolve it by showing valid proof to the court,
Right.
if you can't do that, you could potentially face the same penalties as if you were actually driving uninsured. That $1,000 fine, up to a year in jail, 5 points.
Wow.
Haskell and Dyer often steps in after the citation to get needed documents to the court or negotiate the charge down to a minimal civil penalty. But the key is not neglecting it. Without proof, a conviction for no insurance can stick and lead to those same harsh consequences.
So looking across all these licensing issues, it really sounds like they are far from minor administrative matters.
Not at all.
They carry very real potential for significant criminal penalties. Now, we've covered a lot of ground here today, from DUIs and DWIs all the way through these various licensing offenses. What would you say is the most critical key takeaway from all this information, especially drawing on Haskell and Dyer's expertise?
I think the core message that comes through really clearly from Haskell and Dyer is this. Traffic violations in Maryland, particularly DUIs and the more serious offenses we've discussed, they carry surprisingly significant penalties and have long-term consequences that absolutely necessitate seeking experienced legal representation.
Right.
They strongly emphasize their commitment to fighting for your legal rights, meticulously examining all the evidence against you, and working tirelessly to minimize the negative impacts these charges can have on your life.
It definitely sounds like having someone on your side who really understands the often complex intricacies of Maryland traffic law can make a truly enormous difference in the final outcome.
Absolutely. They bring that specialized legal knowledge and a deep understanding of the court system to effectively navigate these, often challenging legal waters.
So just to quickly recap everything we've covered in this deep dive, it's abundantly clear. Traffic violations in Maryland, not always the minor inconveniences they might seem,
Definitely not.
and they can indeed lead to very serious legal and financial repercussions. Having a solid understanding of the different classifications, the potential penalties associated with each one is absolutely crucial if you're a driver in this state.
And as Haskell and Dyer's insights have so clearly highlighted, the value of seeking expert legal counsel in these situations really can't be overstated.
Yeah.
They can be your dedicated advocate, protecting your fundamental rights, rigorously challenging evidence, and tirelessly working towards the best possible outcome for your specific situation.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? If a seemingly routine traffic stop can potentially alter the course of your life in such profound ways, just how incredibly important is it to be truly informed and fully prepared?
It's critical.
And what other seemingly ordinary everyday situations might also have hidden legal complexities lurking just beneath the surface? This deep dive has definitely just scratched the surface. There's always so much more to understand about the laws that govern our lives.